So today, for those who follow along, will mostly be out of Ephesians 4, verses 17 through 24. We might do some flipping here or there for me to, help support a point. But for the most part, that's where we'll be today. So what is the verse of the year?
It is, blessed are the peacemakers.
Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called children of God. So just about every message we've done this year has been around that point, right? My message as a preacher moving forward is peacemaking, right? Not picking sides, picking peace. How do we go about making peace? Right? And so we did a whole long thing, months and months and months and months, that we talked about pointing out all the wars that are going on in our world and how we are aiding and abetting those wars by picking a side in those wars. And the only way to end the wars is by stop picking a side in those wars. And if everybody just left their side, there would be nobody left on either side to continue to fight. And then we also talked about I don't know, what else did we talk about this year? It's a lot of stuff. But we talked about the last several weeks, talking about wisdom, and wisdom being a way to peace. But one of the things we talked about early on is what do we need to do? What do we need to make peace with before we can make peace outside? What's the first step in being a peacemaker? What's the first thing we need to make peace with? Ourselves. And it seems to be that seems to be the hardest place to make peace. It's easy for us to make peace with our neighbor. It's easier for us to do the right thing, to help the homeless. But a lot of times it's really hard for us to make peace with ourselves. And I've been thinking a lot about that. I was mowing on Friday. And I don't think I can mow anymore, guys. I think between Bonnie and Steve, you guys are going to have to take over the mowing the rest of the year. Because I was feeling pretty good. I got back kind of normal. I mowed Friday afternoon. And by Friday after dinner, I was wiped out. And I've been wiped out ever since. So it might be the mower's fault. It might be triggering my allergies. I don't know. Right. Never mind. I'll leave the gross part out of that when I use my Navage. It wasn't pretty. I was on the mower and I was thinking about this idea of total depravity, right? We think of what's called Calvin's tulip, right? Total depravity, U, unconditional election, L, limited atonement, I, irresistible grace, and P, the perseverance of the saints. So P, totally depraved. We are totally depraved. We are evil, terrible human beings. There's nothing we can do about it. We're totally depraved. Right? U is unconditional election, that you are elected. Only those who are elected get in, and if you're not elected, too bad. Limited atonement means Jesus didn't die for everybody. The atonement of Jesus Christ is only limited to those who are elected. Right? And then God's grace is so great that it's irresistible. That when you are confronted with the true gospel message of God's grace, you will not be able to resist it. Well, if God's grace is so irresistible, why are so many people resisting it today? Why are so many people fleeing from it, let alone resisting it? They are fleeing God's grace. They are running out of the church at record pace. Why? God's grace is so irresistible. And P, perseverance of the saints, I don't know what that one means. I did at one point in time, but I forgot. But total depravity is the one that is stuck with me. If God made me, if God wove me together in my mother's womb, I told you we're going to be flipping around, Psalm 139. Verse 12, for you formed my inward parts, you knitted me together in my mother's womb. Totally depraved. Nope, that's not what it says. Wonderful are your works, which is me. I don't think something that's totally depraved would be considered to be wonderful. Right? My frame was not hidden from you when I was being made in secret, intricately woven in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed substance. In your book were written, every one of them, the days that were formed for me, when as yet there was none of them. How precious to me are your thoughts, O God. Hold on, I missed something here. Oh, I praise you. Verse 14, I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. That doesn't mean that I'm made to be fearful. I'm made to be afraid of, or I'm made to fear. It means I'm made with a sense of awe. That means I'm made to be awesome. I'm made to be in awe of. And I'm made to be wonderful. So where do we get this idea of total depravity? Where do we get this idea that I am made to be destroyed? I am made to be tortured in hell for all of eternity if God's the one who wove me together in my mother's womb? He knitted my inward parts. I was made in awe. I was made to be wonderful. So where does this idea of total depravity come from? And why is it so hard for us to make peace with ourselves? The two go hand in hand. If my entire life I was made to believe I'm totally depraved, that God made me, and as soon as he made me, he then separated me from himself. And then if I don't realize one day that he's the one who separated us, then he's going to torture me for billions of years with fire. Even though the Old Testament says he'll never use fire to punish people, but we overlook that part. That's okay. We don't have to use the whole Bible, just the parts that agree with us. That's what I do. There's a lot of verses I ignore. It's okay. A lot of verses a lot of people ignore. So if I'm totally depraved, how am I fearfully and wonderfully made? And maybe we have, I don't even know how many people, a lot of people who have been growing up their whole lives telling them that they're separated from God, telling them that there's nothing good in them, that apart from Christ, they're terrible human beings. You can't do anything good. There's not one of you who is good. You're all totally depraved. And we wonder why we're constantly at war with ourselves. We wonder why, I think it's like 70-some% of people are on antidepressants. We wonder why so many people have some sort of mental illness. Some of them are genetic, right? Not all mental illness is a spiritual thing. Some of it's just genetic, right? We have legitimate mental illnesses that need to be treated. A lot of our self-esteem problems, a lot of our anxieties, a lot of our depressions, not the genetic ones, come from the fact that we don't think that we are good enough. Because we've been told that our entire life. I talk about this all the time. It gets reinforced at our home with our parents who tell us we're not good enough. It's get reinforced at schools when our teachers tell us we're not good enough. We get cut from a team. We're told we're not good enough. That we didn't get invited to that party because our friends don't think we're good enough. And then we come to church and we're told we're not good enough. And we wonder why we grow up thinking we're not good enough. We wonder why we grow up thinking we have to prove how good we are. We have to overcome our depravity to try to figure out a way to be good. Never realizing that we were created to be good. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, and then on day 1, and then on day 2, and then on day 3. I don't remember the days, because you guys know I don't memorize stuff like that. But then he formed out of the dirt. He formed man and saw that he was good. And then he created all of his creation. He looked over all of his creation, and he declared that all of his creation was very good. We were created to be good. We were created good. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 17. Ephesians 4:17. Now this I say and testify in the Lord, that you must no longer walk as the Gentiles do in the futility of their minds. They are darkened in their understanding, alienated from the life of God because of the ignorance that is in them, due to the hardness of heart. They have become callous and have given themselves up to sensuality, greedy to practice every kind of impurity. But it is not the way you learned Christ, assuming that you have heard about him and were taught in him, as the truth is in Jesus, to put off the old self, which belongs to the former manner of life and is corrupt through deceitful desires, and to be renewed in the spirit of your minds, and to put on the new self, created after the likeness of God in true righteousness and holiness. Right? We have to be renewed to who we were created to be. Because of the callousness of our hearts, the lies that we've been told, we're living like the Gentiles do. We're living in the futility of our minds, believing that we're alienated. Once again, remember in Colossians, I'm not going to find it quickly. But Colossians somewhere, it says that you were formerly alienated and hostile in mind. Meaning you weren't really separated from God. God was never hostile towards you. You only thought so in your mind. But now that you put on the new self, you realize that there is no separation, there is no alienation, there is no hostility. And so we lived in this way. We lived as the Gentiles do, thinking that we aren't good enough. Thinking that we aren't acceptable, thinking that we have to try to conform to the ways of the world in order to be accepted, instead of realizing that we can be renewed back to who we were supposed to be when we were created, when we were woven together in our mother's womb, when we were birthed into the world before we were lied to. Because it says here, in verse 24, and to put on the new self created after the likeness of God in true righteousness and holiness. We were created in true righteousness and holiness. We were created righteous and holy. We were created good. We weren't created to be totally depraved. Several times, we can look at 2 Corinthians 5. We'll start at verse 18. All this is from God, who through Christ reconciled us to himself and gave us the ministry of reconciliation. That is in Christ God was reconciling the world to himself, not counting their trespasses against them, and entrusting to us the message of reconciliation. Therefore we are ambassadors for Christ, God making his appeal through us. We implore you on behalf of Christ, be reconciled to God. Be reconciled to God. When I first met Jessica, we weren't reconciled. We were conciled, I guess you would say. I don't know what the right word is there. Right? But then after a month, I kicked her to the curb and dumped her. And then a few days later, we reconciled. We came back together. Well, she never really left. I came back to her. When we were born, we were with God. We were reconciled with God. Once again, I have no idea if that's a word or not, but I'm going to use it anyway. My ordination gives me the ability to create words. I've told you that many times. I don't know if that's true or not either, but I say it, so it must be true. If I say it enough times, it becomes true. Right? So I was born united with God. I was born one with God. But then I got confused because of the lies that I was listening to. And then I believed that I had separated myself from God. I believed that God and I were not united. We were not one. I lived as the Gentiles do. I lived in the futility of my mind. I lived as though I were separated. And just as I continue, I point this out all the time, that my story with Jessica and our relationship is a perfect mirror of God showing me his love. Because even though I tried to break, I tried to separate, God never left me. God doesn't have to be reconciled to me. He never left. He was constantly there. Those footprints in the sand. Why did you leave me at the hardest time? I didn't leave you. I was carrying you through those times. Right? God never left me. I thought I had left him in my mind, but now I'm being reconciled back to who I was supposed to be in my creation, which is awesome and wonderful, which is righteous and holy, which is good. And that's who I always was. That's who I always will be. I was never not righteous and holy. I just didn't believe I was righteous and holy. I was never not awesome and wonderful. I just believed I wasn't awesome and wonderful. And as long as I continue to believe that I'm not awesome and wonderful, I'm not righteous and holy, I'm going to continue to be at war with myself. I'm going to continue to think that I'm not good enough. I don't belong. I'm not acceptable. I'm not worthy. I'm no good. But if those things were true, then why would God have created me? You're going to tell me God makes mistakes? We can look at members of our family. God made a mistake in creating that guy. God made a mistake in creating that other person I don't like because they're not any good. God doesn't make mistakes, right? We're all good. We just don't believe it because we spent our whole life being told we're not. And it's been reinforced in every facet of our life. Jesus says, the way to death is wide and everybody finds it. The way to life is narrow and few find it. Realizing that you're good is not what everybody else is believing, but everybody else is going to death. We're supposed to be going to life. And it's a very narrow way. It's a very narrow. Not a lot of people are going to figure these things out. Scriptures tell us. But God's grace is irresistible. And when I went through the tulip, I believe in irresistible grace. I believe that when God's grace shows up in its truest form, and it's not been corrupted by man-made religion and institutions, when God's grace shows up, the God of existence, not the God of academia. Once again, I tell this story all the time. The biggest conflict I had in my life was somewhere in the fall of 2015. I realized the God that I had been taught and the God that I was teaching looked nothing like the God that showed up in my life. The God who showed up in my life looked radically different than the God that I was teaching and the God that I had been taught. Which one was the real God? Does the God of our existence match the God of our knowledge? And when that God of our experience, when that God shows up, it's irresistible. You can't deny it. You can be an atheist on the back of the bus at Oklahoma City Airport, and that God's going to show up, and you're going to know exactly who he is. And you're going to know exactly why he's there, and you're not going to be able to say no to him. It can't happen. The problem is, the grace that we have been sharing about God is so conditional. It is so small. It is so puny. People tell people all the time, so you don't need to learn theology anymore? I said, no. I got all the theology I ever need. I don't need to learn any more theology. I got theology all figured out. God is bigger than I could ever imagine. If anything you're trying to teach me makes God smaller, it can't be true. That's my theology. God is more loving than I can ever imagine. If anything you're going to tell me makes God less loving, it can't be true. God is greater than I can ever imagine. If anything you're trying to teach me makes God less great, it cannot be true. That's my theology. That's my theology. And I told you guys several times, I don't care about theology anymore. I don't care about theological development. I don't care about doing Bible studies and biblical sermons. I care about spiritual development. I care about uncovering the who I am and the why I'm here. That's spiritual development. Theological development is who's God. You can't know. He says you can't know me. You can't understand God. Paul says, we can't even fathom. We can't even begin to comprehend all these things that he says. And that's why I can say God is bigger than I can ever imagine, God's more loving than I can ever imagine, and God's greater than I can ever imagine. And anything that you say is going to make him less of one of those three, can't be true. Can't be true. Our God that we believe in is so small. Our Bible is so small. It is infallible. It is inerrant. It's authoritative Word of God. That makes this book so small. It limits it. It makes it try to be something it was never meant to be. And then we can teach things like total depravity once we shrink this down and make it really puny and small and lifeless. We can teach things like limited atonement. We can teach things like penal substitutionary atonement. We can teach those things when we make this really small and we make God really small and we try to confine him to our box, whether it's a dispensational box or it's a Baptist box or it's a Methodist box or it's a Pentecostal. God is bigger than any box we'll ever construct him. So why are we trying to construct boxes for him? And I am better than I can ever imagine I am. So why do I continue to try to figure out how bad I am? I'm not. I'm good. We are good. Why do we keep fighting wars with ourselves? Why do we keep fighting wars with God? Why do we continue to think things that just aren't true? Why do we continue to go along with the masses that are leading to death instead of finding the narrow way that's going to lead us to life? And once again, I'm not talking about eternal life. The good news, part of the good news in finding the narrow way that leads to life is that when you find it, that life never ends. That life is eternal. But in the moment, here and now, in the present, what is that life? What is that life going to be tomorrow? When you wake up and you realize you're good. When you wake up and you realize I don't have to keep fighting this battle trying to convince myself I'm good. I am good. And that's what we do. That's what we're always doing. You know, I forget how they worded it one time. They said, stop trying to figure out what you're supposed to do with your life and just start doing something with your life. Stop trying to figure out. Stop trying to convince yourself you're good and just start realizing you are good. Just start being good. Now, what does that mean? I don't know. I mean, helping homeless people. I don't know. And I know it means not hating people. I know it means not sowing division. I know it means loving your neighbor. And for some of us, for Phil, that might be going and doing prison ministry. For somebody else, it might be working at a homeless shelter. I don't know what those things look like. They're going to be different for everybody because we all have different journeys, and we all have different paths, and we all have different callings. But what I can tell you it looks like when you wake up every morning and you look in the mirror and you love everything you see. When you go to work and you see your coworker and you love everything you see. That's how you know you love you. When you love everything about everybody else you see. That's where we want to go. That's what peace looks like. That's how we become a peacemaker. But in order to do that, we had to get out of the war inside of here. And the only way to get out of the war inside of here is to get rid of these ideas of total depravity. These ideas of limited atonement. These ideas of not being good enough, not belonging, being totally sinful. All fall short of the glory of God. Well, yeah. Of course I fall short of the glory of God because I'm not God. But God is still glorified in whatever it is I do. I'm not going to be as glorified as God is. Of course that's not going to happen. I'm not God. But he's still going to get glory because of me. He's going to get glory because I live. He's going to get glory because I breathe. He's going to get glory because I love my wife and children. I'm not going to get as much glory as he is. I don't want any glory. I want him to have the glory. Don't praise me. I mean, feel free to. I'll take it. I can use some praise. I don't praise God. Today is not the day that I made. Don't rejoice and be glad in it. Today is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. And you are a day the Lord has made. Rejoice and be glad in it. He wove you together in your mother's womb, fearfully and wonderfully. Rejoice and be glad in it. Stop living in the lies of the world. Stop allowing other people to tell you what you're not. God tells us what we are. You know what he tells us? You're mine. And I don't think God collects junk. I know a lot of people who collect junk. Anybody here know junk collectors? God doesn't collect junk. God doesn't collect junk. God collects us. We are his collection. And why does he collect us? Because we have value. Because we have worth. Because we have awe and wonder and goodness and righteousness and holiness. That's why God collects us. We got to start believing these things. If we ever want to make peace in this world, if we ever want to change the world, we have to change how we see ourselves. We have to see ourselves the way God sees us. Perfect. Down at my grandpa's the other day, or not the other day, last week, they're talking again about how I'm messing my kids up by telling them they're perfect. I said, no, I'm not. I'm stopping them from being messed up by being told that they're not good, they're imperfect. God made them. God doesn't make mistakes. Therefore, they're perfect. They might make mistakes, but that doesn't change who they are. They're still perfect. And they're learning. And they're growing. But every hair on their head was perfectly placed there for a reason. Their little itty-bitty characteristics and attitudes and quirks are there for a reason. Yeah, some of them might need to be honed, and some of them might need to be refined. But they were there because God put them there. Therefore, they're perfect. Don't tell me my kids aren't perfect. Don't tell me you're not perfect, because you are. Just because you make mistakes along the way doesn't change your perfection. God doesn't make mistakes. So to say that you're not perfect is to say that God made a mistake. It's not true. God knows these things about us. And once again, I can come up here and I can talk about all this stuff. I still am at war in here. There's times I still don't feel good enough. There's times where I'm still struggling with the fact that why am I not good enough? Why don't more people come to church? Why isn't our church growing? I guess I'm not good enough. You know, what do you call a leader without any followers? Just a guy taking a walk. And a lot of times I feel like I'm just out on a walk. I'm appreciative of all you being here. Where's everybody else at? Is it because I'm not good enough? That's what I struggle with. So once again, I'm not preaching to you. I'm preaching to me. We all need to hear this stuff. We all need to be constantly reminded of this stuff. Because you hear it once here on a Sunday, and you're like, man, that was great. Yeah, I'm wonderful. And then you go to work on tomorrow, and they say, you're a piece of crap. Oh, yep, that's true. Yep, there it is again. Right? You got to keep hearing this stuff. We got to keep believing it. We got to keep telling each other that. Letting each other know that you're perfect. Letting each other know that you're great. Letting each other know that you're awesome. We need to start hearing other messages from everybody else, not just here on Sundays. Revelation 18, the fall of Babylon. I have no idea how I ended up there, and it has nothing to do with our message. I just looked down, and that's what I saw. So don't turn there, Phil. We're not going there. Just open it up. And, I don't know, maybe God's trying to tell me something different. I don't know. Awake, O sleeper, and rise from the dead, and Christ will shine on you. Awake, O sleeper, and arise from the dead, and Christ will shine on you. I have no idea where that's from. It's quoted here in Ephesians 5, verse 14. It's just on this little indented paragraph here, so it kind of stands out. Awake, O sleeper, arise from the dead, and Christ will shine on you. Wake up. Realize you're not a piece of crap. Realize that you are fearfully and wonderfully made, that you're righteous and you're holy, and allow Christ's light to shine on you. Because as long as you're living in the darkness of separation, as long as you're living in the darkness of lies, clouded by deceit, and these things that man-made institutions teach, like total depravity, you're going to stay in darkness. You're going to stay asleep. You're going to stay dead. You're going to continue to follow that path with a mob of people walking off the cliff instead of walking with those couple people who are walking away from it. Awake and allow Christ's light to shine on you. His light doesn't shine on you because you're junk. His light shines on you because you're awesome. Amen.